Thank you for inviting me to be with you here tonight and to share this exciting time when you're launching the Franciscan Action Network. I've been asked to speak with you, and we'll see if the technology gods are with us or not, about why now is a good time for launching the Franciscan Advocacy Network. And usually when I do these talks, actually almost whatever the issue, I often break it up into here's the good news on whatever issue I've been asked to speak to you about, and here's the bad news. Well, if we can pull up, let's go to the next one, Ross. Yeah, I actually have the pleasure tonight of telling you good news and good news. There's actually a great deal of good news of why this is a very propitious time to be starting the Franciscan Advocacy Network, both in the near term, political opportunities within the United States, and in the longer term, opportunities to affect global politics with religious voices. So now really is a time to take the words of Scripture to heart, that nothing is impossible with God. Let's go forward. Regarding the United States, for many of us religious voices, the past 8 years have been a time of witness, a time of being voices in the wilderness on many of the issues of concern to us. From the environment, especially global warming, to issues of war and peace, it has been a difficult time to watch the issues go in the other direction from the way in which the church and religious voices have been calling. But when all else fails, do the right thing, and all else has failed. So the good news is there's a great deal of opportunity now. There's a great deal of openness in the political system to look for new approaches, and really whomever is elected in November, there will be a great deal of policy change. So now is the time to lift your voice. Now is the time to raise the voices of people who cannot be heard in the political process. And now is the time to make that argument forward and to bring about political change. So a great time of opportunity, and an opportunity to practice what I call resurrection politics. And this is taking issues which are thought previously dead on arrival. They have no chance. Taking these issues and raising them up onto the political agenda. And the way to do that is by reframing them. Not by fighting the same old liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican, whatever way you want to carve it out. Not by fighting over the same old gridlocked space, but by reframing it, opening up the political space by bringing in our values, our stories, our examples and experiences that we bring from the field to the dialogue and changing the way people look at these issues. And it's very politically viable to do so now. Now, I don't need to tell you that religious voices speaking truth to power is nothing new in politics. You only need to remember the successful historical example of the abolition movement. Slavery would still be legal today if it weren't for those religious voices speaking truth to power and changing the way the world did business. But we have more opportunities than our predecessors did to bring our truths to power, to bring our religious voices to power. And in an era of globalization, the opportunities that telecommunications really give us much greater opportunities to get our ideas, our values, and our stories out to a wider audience. Because the key point here on this slide is the last sentence. Ideas and capital now move around the globe at the touch of a keystroke. And for us, that's very, very powerful. What we need to get over, though, if you go to the next slide, so what is new? If that's old, religious voices being active in politics, what's new? Well, what's new are what you're all a part of, transnational advocacy networks, what you're starting with the Franciscan Advocacy Networks. These are networks of activists that are bound together by shared values. And these networks are increasing in number, in size, and density, in their resources, the skills and expertise they bring to bear, and in their power and influence. We now have a track record of success of doing things on the international stage as well as domestically by bringing these religious voices to bear. But we have to get over, I think, what is our own myth of our own powerlessness. In the religious communities especially, you can often feel powerless. We're working with people in society who are powerless. We don't have guns, we don't have armies, we don't have money, so we don't think of ourselves as very powerful people, and that is a mistake. We are extremely powerful, especially in an information age, which I'll talk about in a moment. But can I ask for a show of hands of who in the room has at least a 5th grade education? 5th grade or above, okay? If knowledge is power, there is more power in this room now than most people in Africa. Most people in the continent of Africa do not get 5 years of formal education. If you are a girl or a woman growing up in Africa, the average is 0. The average, okay, for formal education. If knowledge is power, we have a great deal of power. Can I ask for a show of hands of how many have access to a cell phone or have a cell phone themselves? I'm sad to admit that I've had to give up on that as well and become part of it. That is great power. It's power that can be used or misused. I mean, this is what is blowing up people in Iraq right now. It's being done with cell phones, so we can use this power for good or for ill, but it's a great deal of power. Can I ask how many people have themselves a personal computer or access to the internet or access to a computer and the internet? Okay. A great deal of power. The entire campaign to ban landmines, the entire international treaty to ban landmines around the world was done with nothing more than a personal computer in a kitchen at home and email. It's a great deal of power we have at our disposal. So our question is not, do we have power? We have it. The question is, how are we going to use it, to what ends, and do we get over this myth of our own powerlessness? Here's the example of Jody Williams, who was able to organize the international campaign to ban landmines with a coalition of religious and civil society voices, and were able to do what everyone told her was undoable. You cannot ban landmines. This is a cheap, readily usable weapon. All the countries in the world have them. This effort is going nowhere. She said, well, thanks for your input. I think we'll try anyway. And in record time, they've got the International Campaign to Ban Landmines Treaty and ratified and now enforced. They have not stopped there, and they are now under very, very rapid progress to ban cluster munitions. These are the weapons that are hurting so many people in Iraq today because they act as if they were landmines. They stay and kill civilians afterwards. Many in Lebanon are dealing with this problem from the Israeli army. And that is on track to perhaps be successful by the end of this year. They just started. So this idea that we can't have much power is an outmoded idea, and I ask you to set that aside and think about what we can do together. Why is it that this is such a propitious moment for religious actors? Because in an information age, ideas matter, and we have ideas. We have our values, we have our history, we have our stories, and those are very compelling. Because of the increased availability and the decreased cost of information technologies, it makes it easier to get those ideas across to a wider audience than ever before. And it makes it harder to shut that down or suppress those ideas. So it's possible, it's easier, and it's cheaper to organize and advocate across distances. And in a 24/7 information environment, the little guys, that's us, can be unleashed. And we especially can be unleashed with our values, our symbols, our ideas, and our stories. Our stories of how policies affect people in real life, putting a human face on political problems. That's very compelling. We have a great deal of credibility because we speak from experience, and that has a greater chance of getting out in the political dialogue now than ever before. So it's an era when individuals can affect international politics, aided again by television, by the internet, by access to information and technology. International activists are able to affect and challenge the power and the policies of states. Again, there's Jody Williams from the landmine campaign. There's Nkosi Johnson, a child activist, AIDS activist in South Africa, who was able to change the way AIDS was viewed in the continent of Africa. But of course, these tools can be used for ill as well, and the example of bin Laden is there as well to remind us, what are we going to do with this power?